think, I'm not sure Mel's here, but I think we're going to move to you, Sophie. And Sophie, well, I'll let Sophie introduce herself and tell you about the role that she's been performing. So over to you.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everyone. My name's Sophie. I'm Senior Navigator for Redbridge. So the role of a navigator is to casework the most complex clients in the borough and to manage the services involved in their recovery and rehousing. For example, we collaborate with drug and alcohol services, health teams, mental health teams, as well as referring to other SHP services, such as floating support and Housing First. Our role as navigators in Redbridge was especially interesting as we started during lockdown, when rough sleeping clients were brought in off the streets and placed into temporary accommodation or shelters. We went out and assessed every client in the borough, which was an amazing opportunity to really understand the task that we were going to face in supporting them going forward. It also gave us an insight into the wide range of issues and support needs rough sleepers in the borough are facing. We found that due to lockdown, we had an increase in rough sleepers who prior to COVID had been in unstable work and accommodation. When lockdown started, many people could not pay rent and were forced onto the streets. This brings me on to the issue of no recourse to public funds. In the Borough of Redbridge, we have a large cohort of non-EU clients who have no recourse, and this is one of the biggest challenges the borough faces. Prior to the pandemic, many had been homeless or in unstable accommodation, working cash in hand to survive, often sending money back to their families in their home countries. We have found that the pandemic has been an especially difficult time for those with no recourse, as they have been unable to support themselves. We also found that this has made them increasingly vulnerable to exploitation. For example, they may take on dangerous or low-paid jobs or turn to criminal activity. We are supporting people from all over the world who have come to the UK for different reasons. Some are seeking asylum and others came here to work and have overstayed on their visas or may have never been in contact with the Home Office at all. Because they have no recourse, they are not allowed to legally work or claim benefits and are at risk of detention or deportation. We are supporting our clients in varied immigration matters, linking them up with solicitors to either claim asylum or naturalise here in the UK if they have been here for 20 years. We have seen that having no recourse to public funds can have a detrimental effect on people's mental health. So we are trying to not only support our clients with their immigration, but to keep them busy with activities and to give them access to mental health support. Our work will be ongoing supporting these no recourse clients, as well as the increasing number of females and young people we've seen entering the service. The pandemic means we have to be constantly evolving and developing our approach to meet our clients' needs. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, thanks, Sophie. Sorry, I was just trying to do the rooms, but I will go. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Pedro, I think, who's going to talk about the work that that he and many others have been delivering in the Britannia Hotel. So Pedro, over to you.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. Hope you can all hear me well. My name is Pedro. I'm the acting regional services manager for Camden. Our involvement here at the Britannia was post the onslaught of the COVID. On March 26th, the UK government instructed that dormitory style night shelters should be closed and mandatory local authorities in England to provide alternative accommodation to those people sleeping rough. There was a model led by UCL that looked at the COVID transmission in a homeless population. And they assessed different scenarios over the autumn and winter, and the study used a cohort of around 46,000 individuals experienced homelessness. And I think specifically around 35,000 or 36,000 living in over 1,000 hostels for homeless people, and around 3,500 sleeping in 143 night shelters. Whilst there's over nearly 8,000 people in this study sleeping outside. The Britannia was set up on the 6th of April, following the breakout of the pandemic in the UK. Over 120 individuals in Camden Pathway Hostel specifically were identified to require shielding due to the high risk health conditions. So in hostels, we've got many individuals with underlying health conditions such as COPD, the organ damage, and so on, which pose a significant risk from COVID. These clients live mostly in hostels where there is no shared facilities, and there is no ability to shield or protect themselves from the risks posed by COVID. So a number of hostel clients moved into the Hotel Britannia. This was then further expanded very quickly to rough sleepers and those without recourse to public funds, and kind of fitting into that model of everybody in, and to prevent people from being outside and at risk. The Britannia model included a MDT approach, consisting of a health manager who would undertake health screening assessments for those being referred in, and also led on the multi-agency liaison that needed to take place. We had a nurse from UCLH supporting with underlying and untreated health conditions, conducting screening and assessments and putting support in place. We have a mental health nurse to provide crisis management, substance misuse team with prescribing support needs, and also doctor support to support with any of those needs that the clients present. All these services came together, offering on-site support, kind of pioneering the health first model that was established at the hotel. This MDT approach was supported with daily meetings involving lead commissioners for mental health services, physical health services, and SHP support services. During our time here, the hotel has conducted several mass screening COVID tests. We've had BBV testing on site and treatment being offered. We had a high number of successful completions of hepatitis C treatments, TB testing, and also flu vaccinations were provided for everyone that's been here at the Britannia. We also had support from a dentist and a podiatrist as well, which has been an absolute fantastic help to many of our clients here at the hotel. We've worked with, during our time here since April, worked with over 120 clients, and we're currently in the decant phase and moving everyone and finding a home for everyone. And we're currently holding just 46 clients with the hotel due to close on the 15th of December. Just wanted to highlight as well that there was a model for England provided by the same UCL model, and there was an estimated that without these preventative measures that were imposed in hotels such as the Britannia in the UK, we've managed to potentially avoid over 21,000 infections and over 266 deaths within the homeless population, with a further over 1,000 hospital admissions. So that's the Britannia Hotel.
Sorry, I'm not sure you could hear me then. Anyway, Pedro, thanks very much for that. There was a question posted in the chat, which I'll pose to you, Pedro, while we're on the matter. So, Tara asked, do we have any stats on how many people housed were supported, I guess, into our hostels, and did anyone go back onto the street? I suppose it's not only into hostels; it's also into settled accommodation such as PRS as well, I imagine.
That's right. We are collecting that information. I mean, I don't have those to hand, but I could circulate that to Tara if she would like to see that. So most of the clients that have moved on from here have progressed to either PRS. Some have gone back into hostel accommodation due to the support needs. But then also we've had clients move into sheltered accommodation. We've had clients also been given direct offers. So the bulk of the client group that we're holding at the moment are clients who are looking for those PRS offers, and we're working intensively closely with our Camden partners to ensure that everyone has a place to go to. There were, you know, as expected with this kind of client group and the issues that might be presented when you've put in so many people into one building, that we did have a number of incidents, and those people who can no longer stay here at the Britannia have all mostly, barring I believe 2 who then had ongoing support when they returned to the streets, to actually get a place to stay. So even when we've not been able to hold certain individuals here at the Britannia Hotel, we've worked intensively to make sure that weren't returning to the streets and they were finding somewhere.
Brilliant, thanks. So there are questions coming up in the chat, but I think I'll return to those at the end of the discussion. I think what I might do is mix it up a bit, because in terms of the order, because it might be worth letting you, Yolande, talk about the move on stuff from the hotel now, if you're happy to, and then I'll move on to you, Kieran. You can talk about the health stuff, because it's all related to the Britannia Hotel specifically. So Yolande, are you happy to go now?
Yes, I am. Good morning, everyone. I'm Yolande Souza. I was actually removed from SHP number 9 St. Pancras Way to come in support with the Move On team. My work at the Britannia was to try and liaise with other agencies to move the clients on into, some of them through the pathways, their own private accommodation. We work together in partnership with Camden Council. Most of the clients that we've met at the Britannia, my colleague Chrissy and I, were clients that were brought straight from the streets. They had no papers, they had no identity, they had nothing at all, no paperwork. So we started from scratch. We had to kind of apply for birth certificates, engaging with the client, try to find out the initial, the smallest paperwork we could get to be able to apply or work with Camden Council to move them on was the biggest challenge we faced at the Britannia. We managed really with a lot of difficulties to move most of the clients. Like Pedro said, we've only got 46 left out of 100 and maybe 120, 130. We got the paperwork ready. We work with Camden Council. We have Tuesday meetings with Camden Council, and together we put a plan in place. I have to admit that the plan didn't always work, but because it was a weekly meeting, we were able to follow up on everything. Like some of them didn't have the papers, like I said. They had no birth certificate, they had no passport, no identity card. Many of them, we tried to do the citizenship card to be used as identity. It worked at the beginning. Then for those who needed to get passports, it did not work anymore. So it was quite challenging. But because we didn't do all this work on our own, we had a multi-agency working. We were working with hospitals, we worked with the Home Office, we worked with various other agencies. We were able to get somewhere. We've only got 46 and they're all earmarked for a permanent place. Not, maybe we'll have maybe 2 or 3 who don't have any recourse to public fund, EU residents that we're not able, because the embassies are short, the appointments at the embassies are very long. Some of them are 3 months. There's a 3-month waiting list. It is quite challenging to get those appointments, but with the multi-agency, we work directly with the Home Office. We are able to break through those barriers. With a bit of luck, and the multi-agency, the strength of the multi-agency working, we will move those 46 clients into their own permanent accommodation. It's a bit of luck. Nobody will be on by the 7th of December. I hope I've shedded a bit of light onto what we're doing at the Britannia at the moment.
Yes, you certainly have, and it's an amazing piece of work, really. Not completed, but it sounds very much as if you're very clear about what the objectives are and the fact that you're going to get to them. And I think it has been a feature of this pandemic how many people that we've managed to support into settled accommodation of one form or another. And we will return to that issue in due course when we come to Rosie, but we're not going to go there just yet. I think now we're going to ask, and I cannot find it, Kieran to talk about the work that he's been doing in the hotel in relation to the.
Yeah, sure. So it's been myself, Judith, and Pedro managing the Britannia Hotel. And I think one of the key successes of this whole process has been like the access, what the kind of government funding has enabled us to do. So, you know, a lot of money was put into the hotel, and it kind of did allow all of these different agencies to come together. So people from health, people like the focus team, you know, having all these things under one roof, I think was a real something that might not happen again. But it's something that really worked in terms of ensuring everyone's safety and also ensuring that all of those basic needs were kind of met. So the fact that we had in-house prescribing going on, you know, kind of bringing that to clients. There were clients that stayed on methadone scripts that otherwise wouldn't have been able to do so. And health, I think, has been a really good way of engaging clients, because it's kind of, if we look at the Maslow's kind of needs, it's that kind of bottom rung, really. Making sure that, you know, everyone's kind of stable, everyone has a safe place to be, and also that someone cares about their health as well. And the kind of professionals doing that were of a really, really high level. So it's something I think what I take away from the hotel is obviously we were able to create this environment and this kind of brilliant way of working, but it also costs quite a substantial amount of money. So I think the learning that we're going to take away is how can we replicate those successes within our hostel systems, because obviously we can't spend the amount of money that it costs to bring all these services together. So we have to think of a way of taking the learning away and kind of replicating it in our normal constraints, really. The other thing to say is as well, I think with the kind of health teams, one of the best things was that we kind of learned a bit about each other's worlds. The kind of health team would talk about patients and like we would talk about clients. And I think we kind of met in the middle after like we'd worked together for a few months. So we kind of, you know, shared that kind of learning about the health teams kind of learned about the sort of barriers that clients face in terms of accessing support. They kind of took a lot of barriers down for us in terms of, you know, helping clients access, you know, primary care. Then also, yeah, we kind of learned a lot about their side of things as well. So that's the thing that I'll kind of take away from it.
That's great. Thanks, Kieran. And I think, you know, hopefully in terms of the discussion that we'll have in due course, Roots will touch on the learning around health and partnerships. And, you know, I think partnerships is a feature that's come up a lot in terms of this. And I think it has been an incredible success, I suppose, over this period, really. That's great. Thanks. Now I am going to ask Rosie to talk about more Move On. In this instance, it's commissioned by the GLA and supporting the hotels. But I'll let Rosie tell you more about that.
You stole my first line. No, it's fine. I didn't actually prepare a whole speech, so it would be quite off the cuff. So yeah, I'm Rosie, and I work for the GLA commissioned hotel Move On service. I'm on secondment from Lambeth Floating Support, and now I am a senior resettlement worker in this team, which involves a lot of coordination. So the process, how we get referrals is, we've got all these people in hotels that are GLA funded, as you'll know probably, but yeah, they're GLA funded and they're run by various charities. A lot of them are run by St Mungo's, there's also Thames Reach, maybe there's others, but I can't remember. So they would send a referral to the GLA, and then the GLA kind of triages it and decides where to send on that referral. We would usually get the clients that didn't have extremely high support needs, at least that's what the referral says. Sometimes, you know, we get the referral, find actually it's quite a different story when we meet the client, or further on down the line. And yeah, I think other people have mentioned this, but the clients are just quite a mixed bag. So there's people who have been on the streets for years, and then there's people who had just been on the streets for a few months because they lost their job in hospitality, for example, due to COVID. So yeah, this is kind of client base is quite a mixture, but as I said, not particularly super high needs. So yeah, we would meet the clients, do a brief assessment. So nothing like what I was used to with Lambeth Floating Support, where you literally go through, you know, every single thing that could possibly be wrong or possibly need help with. But this was, yeah, very brief, more like 20-minute, half an hour, just where do you want to live? Are there barriers to you sustaining a tenancy? Obviously you wouldn't ask it in that way, but yeah. So it's then a case of linking them up with a suitable property, and that is the tough bit, because whilst we have all the properties, we've got loads of properties, it's often a case of managing the client's expectations about where they're going to live, what kind of place they're going to get, because people, I don't know, they might have, obviously people have ended up homeless, so they know that there is a problem, but they might not know the extent of the housing crisis and the fact that even, you know, probably half or most of us are not, you know, we don't own our houses, a lot of us, most of us probably, and we're renting, and we're often in shared houses, shared in rooms in shared houses well into our 30s, you know, or 40s or so. A lot of the clients, they actually are saying, well, I need a 1-bedroom flat, and it's really not going to happen unless they move out of London. So that's one difficult part of it, just managing the client's expectations. And then you've got agencies and their expectations, the landlord's expectations. You've also got the GLA's expectations on, you know, how many numbers of housed clients we've got every week. And then you've got our values and expectations of the project as a whole, as SHP. So yeah, a lot of expectations to manage, and there's a lot of coordination involved. So once you've got a viewing set up, the client's agreed to go. At that point, it's about making sure they actually get there. So that's when you've got even more coordination around the hotel, and, you know, are they going to help you get the client to the viewing, and do you have to organize a taxi, and who's going to pay for it? And yeah, there's a lot of work there too. Finally, hopefully they sign up. Hopefully the agent doesn't trick them into signing for a higher amount than what we agreed, which occasionally has happened. Things like that can go wrong. Everyone knows what a lot of landlords are like, big agencies anyway. Yeah, and then we've got the phase of tenancy support. So right now we've housed 71 people, and that's out of around 163 referrals. We're actually doing pretty well with tenancy sustainment, because we've, out of those 71 we've housed, only 10 the tenancy failed in some way. And that's not about the client themselves even getting evicted. It's more like there might be antisocial behaviour in the house that they moved into, which is beyond our control. They're not even our clients that are causing it. It might be other issues. There's a whole range of issues. But out of that 10 that the tenancy failed, we've managed to rehouse 5. So that's only 5 that are back in the hotels. There's only one guy that I know of who is on the streets, and he probably maybe was... I don't know, it's something that we're working on anyway. Yeah, so now we're in a kind of tenancy sustainment phase of things, and still have a few people left to house. Yeah, and I'm sure I'll talk later about the learning from all of this and what our plans for the future are. I think that's basically an overview.
Lovely, thanks, Rosie. Yeah, so and I because I've been quite closely involved in that, it's an incredible piece of work, and housing over 70 people in such a short period of time is unheard of, really. But it does show what can be done when there's the will, there's the money, and there's the, I guess, the opportunity in terms of sort of a captive audience, really, that we could work with so closely. But yeah, it's been an amazing bit of work, and remains so, really. Now I'm going to move rapidly on to Zoe, who is going to tell us more, I guess, more about maintaining services, really, during this period.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. I'm the service manager for Ashley Road and Milton House supported accommodation hostels in Islington. And I'm going to speak about the impact of COVID-19 and hostels. So myself and Pedro were fortunate enough to attend the Pathway for Homelessness conference on the 11th and 12th of March this year. So that gave us a bit of a head start in terms of contingency planning for the hostel provision. Dr. Al Story from the Find and Treat team dedicated the final session to discuss about the impact of COVID on the homeless population in London. What they concluded was that a dramatic change in service delivery was necessary, and that we would require a radical step up in service planning. So after this, we decided in Islington that we would join the Homeless Task Force, which was set up by grassroots organisations. And I wanted as many of our service users to be involved in this as possible. So there was a meeting set up at the Union Chapel, and I brought over some service users to this meeting, and we discussed about kind of safety planning during this time, about partnership working, mutual aid groups, and then also about, you know, what we would need in terms of provision from the substance misuse treatment. We were thinking about having extra naloxone pens on site. We were worried about those residents or clients that were not linked into any substance use service during this time, the impact that would have on them during lockdown. And then after that, we created a lot of feedback forms. We wanted to speak to staff. We wanted to speak to residents in the hostels, find out what they would need over this period. And what we thought about was we needed to increase the hygiene practices across the board. So that meant increasing the cleaning hours. We needed to provide PPE not only for staff, but also for the residents on site. We thought about the kind of practical layout of the buildings, if we needed to dedicate space for people that had to isolate. We thought about we had to buy individual cleaning products for the clients so that they would have them for their rooms and also for the shared toilet and bathroom spaces. And then we thought about, okay, how are we going to link in those people that were hard to engage into the substance misuse treatment and get them onto opiate substitute prescriptions. And what we found was that the Better Life Substance Use Service removed a lot of bureaucratic processes and red tape. And previously, when it took quite a long time or a number of appointments for people to attend, to get onto a methadone script, for example, we found that process was much more fast-tracked. And we were able to get around 80% of our residents linked into substance misuse treatment. Sorry, previously it would be an average about maybe 60%, but then due to the fast track, we had around 80 to 90% people linked into substance misuse services. We found our relationship with GPs improved. So we were able to take photographs of a wound, for example, and we could send it over via email to the GP. And instead of the client having to go into the GP service, the GP could prescribe antibiotics just by speaking to staff members, and also from the email communication as well. We found that there was an escalation in move-ons from Islington Council. Previously, direct council offers were unheard of for the past couple of years, and we found that we were getting direct offers for particular people, especially those that were deemed to be in the shielding category. Housing First, we managed to move people on to Housing First, around 5 to 6 residents in a very short period of time into Housing First. So we had the most positive quarter this year, that we had 8 planned move-ons, which was unheard of previously. Usually it's around maybe one to 2 people getting planned move-ons, but we had 8 between Ashley Road and Milton House. And then we wanted to think about how we were going to look after residents whilst they were in lockdown. So we thought about our opportunities programme, how we could make that safe and socially distanced. So along with the Rock Workers, we planned socially distanced pizza parties in the garden. We get yard sale pizza to provide some pizza. We did like photography workshops with the people of the street. So they handed out disposable cameras and people could go off and just take photographs on their own during lockdown. And then we got the photographs developed. The exhibition is postponed, but they're going to do an exhibition whenever it's safe to do so. We in the process of getting Netflix set up for both Ashley Road and Milton House residents so that they can use their time positively watching TV indoors and have more options to watch. We created COVID champions at Ashley Road and Milton House that would feed back to myself and the deputy manager. They would help us to create weekly information leaflets that we would disperse around. And they would be our kind of point of contact in terms of how to make, if somebody had to self-isolate, how to make that more comfortable for them. So we purchased mobile phones, got microwaves if they had to remain in their room. And then the City Harvest, the food donations, they've been an absolute godsend, delivering the most nutritious and quality food every Friday. And then things like the Find and Treat team coming out and doing COVID-19 testing for staff and residents. And then the arts distraction packs. So what we've found is that, the last couple of months, there's been really some positive changes and ways of working that we hope to continue within the hostels, and things just seem to be running a bit smoother in terms of practices around move on and referrals and things like that as well. That's it.
That's great. Thanks,
Yeah.
Zoe. Can I ask you? I mean, that's brilliant. I think the themes around partnerships and around move on and and around opportunities as well have run through all of this conversation. Did you actually have anybody with COVID, or have you had anyone with COVID during this period?
So we had 2 suspected cases, and the help from Public Health England has been absolutely amazing. Literally, as soon as you get in contact with them, they'd be on the phone straight away. But they were false alarms, and we've had 2 staff test positive about 2 weeks ago, but we've managed to contain that. It hasn't spread into other staff members, and it hasn't spread into any of the residents as well. So so far we've managed to keep everybody safe, or the residents safe.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think the work that has gone on in terms of protecting clients and staff has been amazing. And when you hear some of the horror stories about the rates of infection in other countries, I heard stories about America, the levels of infection are around 75% in their hostels. What we've achieved within our service has been pretty nothing short of miraculous, really. But we've got a number of people still to speak, so I'll move rapidly on, and I'll ask the next speakers to be succinct, I guess is one way of describing it. And I think we'll move to you, Miriam. I hope, before I do though, I think Mel and Bankole are here, and I'm hopeful that they're going to tell us a bit about their work as well in due course. So Miriam, over to you. Sorry, I've lost. I'm going to try and focus on you. If you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yep, great.
Hi, I'm Mariam. I run the Newham Hotel, which is based in East Ham, and the Plastic Women's Service. I'll keep it short. Basically, the Newham Hotel is a 14-bed mixed gendered accommodation for medium to high risk rough sleepers. It was started really by Newham Council because when they got all the rough sleepers off the street into various hotels, Thames Reach were providing floating support, but they found that there was a lot of these very entrenched high risk rough sleepers who needed 24-hour support staff on site. So they picked this family hotel and decanted the current clients and put the high risk clients in there. There was a bit of a challenge beginning because we didn't have an office space. We were just working out. We had nothing in. We were kind of assessing, looking in sheets and everything like that. So quite chaotic at the beginning, but very interesting. What we found was a lot of the rough sleepers know each other very well. They have a lot of history already, and so in COVID it was difficult to contain them in their rooms. They kept going into each other's rooms. So I think about 200 times a day I would say, clients, can you get out each other's rooms please? And obviously hygiene levels were also quite difficult to maintain, but we did our best, and staff had to do a lot of cleaning as well for that. Then what we found was, because of the relationships and dynamics of the rough sleepers, there was kind of the females who were sex working and taking substances, and very much just focused on that kind of survival day-to-day basis. They will get the males who were also, so I proposed to Newham that really we need another place which we can put the females. There was a kind of a 50-50 opinion about it. Some people contacted me from the outreach team, from Newham, and said, this is brilliant. This is what we've needed for years, like a female on service, fantastic. Other people and also it's probably nice. But actually we opened the service. It's a 7-bed, it's kind of walking distance from the Newham Hotel, and it's been pretty successful. Actually a lot calmer than the Neville Hotel. And out of both services, we've managed to now move the referral system and create a more integrated model with the other East London services of Housing First for female offenders specifically, and obviously the Navigator service. So we found, for example, that some clients, some of the females who have partners, haven't stayed in the accommodation very much. So they've been moved into HPAS accommodation with a Navigator, for example. And yeah, we've had quite a few successful Housing First clients move on as well. And that's created a much smoother pathway in Newham for the medium to high risk rough sleepers. We've also found that because of the drug use, CGL, which is the drugs provider, they haven't been able to run detoxes as they would normally do community detoxes. So we've had 2 successful alcohol detoxes where clients with lower needs moved into the Newham Hotel, conducted a week's detox under our supervision, and then have been able to, been really successful, move on, get a job, move into PRS accommodation, and they're doing very well, kind of self-reliant now. So, and we've been able to also reconnect some of the no recourse people back into Europe as well. But I'll wrap it up there. There's been lots of challenges and quite a few successes as well.
That's brilliant, Miriam. Yeah, thank you. And I think one of again, this is a common feature. I think it was the speed with which the service was set up, and that you've established working processes that are really effective, which has been so impressive. And I think that has been a feature again, that we've been able to set services up incredibly rapidly and seize the opportunities that have been available. So, but thanks, Miriam. Now I realise we're sort of overrunning a bit on the chat, but I realise that we also have Mel here. Mel, are you Mbankoli from Redbridge Services? I wondered, Mel, I mean, we should try and keep it brief because we should try and do a break. But do you want to say a little bit about, I know it's very hard to say a little about, given how much work that you've actually done, but do you want to give us a flavour of your work?
Sure. Okay, so I guess I'll start with outreach. So Redbridge start, when we went into lockdown, we were sent emails through from the GLA notifying us that Redbridge Start would be one of the outreach teams that would be doing the Chorus GLA hotel referrals. So from what happened was the outreach team took over the whole the triage for all the rest sleepers in the borough. We normally work with a homeless day centre called the Welcome Centre, which used to do the outreach. Used to do the triage alongside outreach. That shut down, so outreach and triage came in-house to the Rydell shelter. So what happened was outreach workers came in-house, we had enough space. We had sometimes between 10, 12 people turn up daily looking for housing. These were people either from being evicted, because they've lost their jobs, domestic abuse, domestic violence, breakdown of relationships, people from people that were who'd left immigration support, like NAS accommodations and so forth. So the outreach, the triage was to do the COVID screening. So outreach team then did all the screening tools, have all the tools to screen people and refer people onto GLA hotels around London. Some people went into TA, other people came in-house into Rydell. So with Rydell, we expanded from using half of the building, which is quite a large care centre, and we had 33 people in 16 rooms. We decanted in one day and took over 2 floors on the other side of the building, and we moved people out into TA accommodations. We had to do really quick assessments to see those who were lower needs, low risk going to TA, and those higher needs come in, or more vulnerable come in to Rydell. I think, I can't remember what day it was towards the end of April. We had around 30 new people coming in on one day. So it was sitting them down, explaining what the service was, who we were, and then allocating them rooms. We assessed where they should go, who they should be next to, who they shouldn't be next to, and we tried to place people where we could minimise the risk to everybody and actually make it safe. At similar times, I'm not sure if Sophie's already spoken, but Sophie and Jack started, the navigators, the senior navigators, they started a month later in May. I was tasked with doing a resettlement assessment form. So we needed to assess all the people that have been placed into TA, because we need to know who they were and to get some information of them. So the navigators then went out to do those assessments. So that went on for a number of weeks. We worked closely with the council, sending through reports weekly, tracking everybody. And so all the services kind of worked together. So we worked cohesively. We also brought in-house, we had GP surgery and a nurse on a separate day. We had food deliveries from the Welcome Centre, the Homeless Day Centre, laundry done by the day centre. We had mental health outreach service that was newly commissioned. We partnered with them, and we're still partnered with them, working closely on cases, and also outreach for substance use. So there was a lot of juggling, a lot of work, and it was just quite a hard push constantly over the last few months. So I've rushed through that, but I thought I'd keep it.
No, that's brilliant, man. And I think I think we'd have to give you your own session really to cover it, to do it justice. But thanks, that's really helpful. I'll quickly move on to Bankole, and if you can keep it brief, but cover the essentials, and just say a little bit about the work of the outreach, which complements what Mel says.
Yep. Basically, our work became we became the main gatekeeper, and what it means that we're not only working with the rough sleepers, people sleeping on the sleeping rough on the street, but also people who are at risk of being homeless because of overcrowding and all of that. So we sort of assess them, do the triage assessment. And from that triage assessment, we identify if they got low needs or high need, low need or high need. Then if they got low need, which we not send it to Rydell. High need, they go to Rydell. Low need go to the council. So within that period, this for the 3 months or 4 months period of lockdown, we've seen over 250 people. Mm-hmm. And it's for me, I feel that for us, the outreach, our work became more efficient, if I can use that language, that word, because we now have we have a high turnover of people coming into us and sending them to places where they will stay, and we now have a good rapport with the homeless people, which is still going on to today. And I'm very happy that people feel that they can come to us. We don't even look for homeless people anymore, rough sleepers anymore. They come looking for us, which is very good. Yeah. I'll just cut it short that way.
That's brilliant, Bankole. Thank you. Can I ask, because obviously we speak as if we don't, but there's always a sense that this is almost like we've a process completed, but the reality is things are very much going on. Are you seeing large numbers of people coming onto the street?
Yes.
Well, okay.
Yes, I think what's happening is thanks to Redbridge. Redbridge is very responsive, unlike the neighboring boroughs like Newham and Barking and Dagenham. We have Havering on the other corner and Wharton Forest. So we got a lot of homeless people, especially rough sleepers, coming into Redbridge. So easy, and because there's interface. When you phone these other boroughs, when homeless people sleeping rough in those other boroughs, they have to make a phone call, and sometimes they stay on the phone. Even when we help them to do the phone call, to stay on the phone for 20, 30 minutes before you can get somebody to respond to you. But when they come to Redbridge, they see us, and that's why a lot of them they like to come to Redbridge. And Redbridge also is a place where this is like a culture where people, like to beg here, and people give a lot. And so we've got a lot of homeless rough sleepers coming in here, and they know that if they come in here, they will get attended to by outreach.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point, really. But and also, I think it's very striking that we are seeing additional people on the streets, because there has been a lot of investment, but there's no suggestion that the process that we went through when the pandemic started is going to be repeated in terms of hotels and so forth. So it will, given that we're moving in, albeit a month's lockdown, it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds really, and I guess how we can respond to that. But I guess we'll discuss some of that in the breakout rooms really. I mean, I think it's great to hear from all of you guys, and obviously I'm familiar with some of the work, but I'm certainly not familiar with all of it, and hearing about all of it and the different responses within the boroughs, but also the sort of similarities, I think has been very interesting as well. I wondered if before we move into the rooms, whether there are any questions. Did anyone want to ask any questions? Just feel free to speak up really, because I don't have a means of managing that. I know there were some in the chat. I have a question. So Andy says, I'm not sure if I lost, did SHP ease for women to be in a separate hostel to allow sex work? I'm not sure that's the point you were making, Mariam, was it?
Yeah, I apologize. Is the only thing that me and my colleagues sort of heard at some point. So that's why I'm just double checking.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
No, not to allow sex work. We've obviously linked them in with Hestia and NIA and other female organizations who are working with them to exit sex work, but a lot of them aren't ready for that yet. They're very entrenched in their current patterns of behavior and are still seeing the males that are are exploiting them. So we're very much working with them in partnership with the other organizations. But it was more the point of the female hostel being set up was more because having the males and the females mixed in one hostel together was causing quite a few issues. And because it's just a family hotel, we obviously don't have the infrastructure that a hostel does. So things like CCTV, and we have just the staff. So
I think we're at that point where you're cutting out.
We really want to reduce that risk and keep them as safe. I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my connection. Did anyone hear any of that?
It is inevitable that someone has a poor connection, I'm afraid. That's just the nature of this. It's interesting, the whole point about sex work came up in a discussion yesterday about Housing First, really, and the difference in terms of managing that particular challenge in a hostel as opposed to when someone is supported in their own accommodation, really, and the different challenges that presents. So it's interesting that it comes. It's clearly very much a focus of some of the work that we do. And I've got a question from Bonnie. It says, is it the funds that are limiting? Oh, actually, Bonnie, do you want to just ask the question rather than me read it?
Okay. Yeah, hi, I'm Bonnie from fundraising. Yeah, I was just interested to know, hearing how successful the multidisciplinary, oh my goodness, I can't say it, multidisciplinary team approach in the hotels has helped. And I just wondered, is that something we'll be looking at as part of our wider strategy now to try and roll out to our hostels, etc.? And I'm just thinking, I suppose, with my fundraising hat on too, in terms of future projects for us.
Yeah, great. Have you joined us recently, Bonnie?
No, I've been with us for a year or so. I worked with Agatha and Tara.
Oh, okay, right.
Our team is growing now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that is a very good question, and who wants to answer it? Kieran, is that you?
I can say something about it.
That would be good. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So I think really the MDT, I'm not sure how much it costs to install that in our hotel, but it's a very significant amount of money. So much so we initially ran until July, I think. August, and that's when the funding ran out for the health professionals to work in the hotel. So we've been working since August. Camden extended the hotel till December, but we now run without the MDT team. So I think we're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds to have installed that in the hotel, and it was government funding. So we now operate, it's just SHP staff we have a lot of the systems and the models are kind of here, but we don't meet on a daily basis to talk about the health of the clients. But we do have that informed approach in what we're doing now, and some of the, like we have like an ease of access that you maybe wouldn't have in a hostel in terms of the contacts we have, like, because we still maintain those relationships. We don't have the people paid in employment in the hotel. So my thing is really how we take that away, and how we, whether it's like we think about, instead of having a complex needs worker in a hostel, for example, would it be better to have like a health navigator, someone, I know that's something that's been spoke about, someone who can do that in the hostel systems and kind of bring those things in without having to spend a fortune to do so. So like, yeah, that's kind of where we're at with the hotel. So
yeah, no, that's helpful. Does anyone else want to say anything? I wonder, Pedro, is there anything that you're taking back in, because presumably some of the Camden services are opening up now. Is there stuff learning that you're taking back into the hostel services from the hotel work?
Well, I think kind of Kieran kind of really hit most of the points there, and I think in terms of the hostels particularly in its format, one of the things that we've always struggled with was the fact that we often looking at the primary need of the client being the substance misuse or the homelessness situation, but often neglecting that those presenting issues that are actually masking a depth of underlying health conditions that are way more serious than actually their opiates use is at the moment, that has been managed in some way or form for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And so really it's about us starting to think a lot more about that approach around the health and the support that we could be putting in place to ensuring that those clients' needs are being met, so then they can actually address some of the other issues that we often look at first, such as the substance misuse and so on. So certainly that's some of the things that we will be taking into the hostels, is how we can ensure that we are effectively supporting our clients and navigating them towards engagement with health services, which has often been a struggle, particularly when we look at, we still struggle here at the Britannia with engagement with social services around social care acts and, putting those things in place for the clients.
Yeah, that's great. That's helpful. I mean, the flip side of that, I suppose, has there been learning, do you think, for the council, for the CCG and so forth from this as well, that they'll be taking forward? I mean, maybe you can answer with them, but I'm not sure whether you have any sort of sense of that.
Go on. Sorry, Yolande, was you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to add a little bit to it, because I've been working in the homeless sector for over 20 years. But one thing I noticed at the Britannia with this client group is the fact that we concentrate so much on the substance use, just like Pedro and Kieran spoke about, the substance use and the health of the clients, which are vital, but we kind of forget the basics. We work in, at the moment, I can't use the word struggle, but I have challenges with clients who they've been on the street for over 20 years. They're known to the street services, but they never have some kind of basic birth certificate, basic, any kind of identity, to the extent that we started working with people that we wonder who they really are. Do they have an identity? I think it's so important to get back to basics. Try and think about the identity of the client, not just the client with substance use and health issues, but who is this person? We've worked with wonderful, wonderful people, but because they are entrenched rough sleepers, they had no identity. Who are they? I think if we start with that, I noticed that once the identity of the client was reestablished, it gave them some kind of self-confidence. We saw a different side to this rough sleeper that was moved into Britannia because of the COVID. It's really important we bear that in mind. In every hostel, in the future, we think about the identity. Who is this man sleeping on the street for the past 20 years? Was he a former minister? Was he a former, I don't know, somebody that worked in a petrol firm? Was he a war criminal? Whoever he is, the identity of the client is what I have to bring into this meeting.
That's a wonderful point, and thank you for that. I think that's a very interesting aspect of it. I guess the nature of the sort of identity of our clients and the fact that they're so invisible much of the time, really.
Yeah, and with that, the Yolandi and the team here have worked tirelessly to, as you can imagine, to even get the simplest of move-ons. The requirements now, even to just be able to access your benefits, universal credit, you need to have a bank account, and banks won't see you unless you've got an identification. So they've worked tirelessly, and just sort of to revert back to your question around the learning from commissioning, is that the model here in its ideal way of operating has been successful, and that they're working on ways on how they can continue this work, but to bring it across the whole pathway of Camden services, particularly the hostel accommodations. And we start to already see some of that trickle in with the psychologists that Mark, you'd be familiar with over at obviously Southampton Row, but now another psychologist potentially to kind of be opened up to the pathway in Camden hostels, and then looking already at the as an example, we've got the mental health nurse who's come here to support the clients of the Britannia. She's now providing satellite services already within some of the Camden pathway hostels, including one of our own at Dennis Handfield House. So some of those working practices that are already here are already starting to trickle into the accommodation services.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, and thank you for that. I'm going to break us out into rooms now because, well, I think I think it's useful to talk to each other and have you as the audience also have a chance to participate in terms of discussing the issue more directly with colleagues. You're going to be allocated randomly to rooms, and which means I'm hopeful that the speakers are going to be distributed about the room, so there'll always be someone there that can refer directly to the work that's happened, but I'm not controlling that, so fingers crossed that will be happening. I've also put the title of the discussion for that particular room in the name of the room, so hopefully you'll be able to read that. Otherwise it's going to be a bit of a struggle, but I'll put it in the chat anyway, because then you should be able to refer to that if there's any issues. But I'm going to break you into rooms now. I'm going to do that for 15 minutes. We're only here until 12 o'clock, so there won't be a lot of time for feedback, but I might ask that if you want to, I mean, we'll have a little chance for that, but if there's anything particular that you wanted to represent, then put it in the chat, I would say, as participants in those. But I'll break you into the rooms now. Hopefully this should work, and catch you all in a bit. You'll be given a 1 minute warning, I think, as the 15 minutes comes to an end. All right. Well, look, we've only got 5 minutes left, so I'm not entirely sure we're going to do justice to the chat. Are there any insights or ideas or thoughts that anybody wants to share at this point? Did anyone solve the issue of no recourse, for example?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's a no then. Okay. But I think as we've only got a few minutes, if anyone, feel free to stick anything in the chat that people would choose to. I know, I mean, it was I'm not sure Zoom distributed people quite as we might have hoped, but such is the nature of the technology, really. And I don't know if anybody did want to share, or were there any last questions that anyone wanted to ask of the panelists?
I have something that's not a question, but just kind of like a bit of an insight. Chatting to Marion in the chat, was thinking that we both have had like quite a similar experience in kind of what we've been through, and we're in different boroughs. And I think what might be interesting is setting up some kind of chat sometime for the guys who have been in hotels to kind of capture kind of learning lessons and outcomes, or kind of, that's something that I think, because once this ends, it's then, you know, obviously we've had like films recording the work we've done here and stuff, but kind of what myself and Mariam have done, it would be interesting to kind of capture that and kind of share that, I think.
Yeah, that is a really good idea. And I think it has struck me, because I mean, I really had nothing to do with the work in Camden particularly, but it struck me how similar the issues are, really. The responses of the boroughs or the structures locally may be different to some extent, but in many respects, there are a great deal of overlap. And I think that learning can be carried from one borough very much to the next. And I think, but capturing the learning is the key bit of that, you know, I mean, obviously this is has provided a lot of interesting insights, but actually distilling it down into some key learning lessons, I think would be an interesting exercise. So I'll take that idea away and share it with Tony, and we can think about what that might look like in terms of an ongoing piece of work. I see Tara's got her hand up.
Yeah, sorry, Mark. What I'm worried about is all this amazing work that's been done. We cannot do what SHP always does and not shout about it. We need papers out there. We need films being shared. We need to talk about all the amazing things we're doing. I do it on a daily basis when I speak to my corporates, but we need to do it as a charity, as a whole. We should be doing papers and get them out there about all the results that we've got, sharing the stats, sharing the information. The health thing, for a start, is amazing. The amount of people that we've worked with and you know, prevented serious diseases and stuff. And, you know, it's fantastic work, and I'm really proud to work for SHP. So let's shout, let's get it out there.
I think, sorry.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Just going to say at the back of what Taz is saying, and I think Taz very much knows my views also. I think, you know, we potentially got here a real good opportunity, not only just in recognition of everyone's work, you know, just listening to everyone here, it's absolutely amazing, the work. And, you know, in terms of your idea, potentially creating a steering group from everything you know, in terms of, you know, how we can potentially create a model of work and improve our ways of working, but actually how SHP can really fundamentally campaign and be, you know, there, you know, in terms of changing, you know, government and policy making and being at the forefront of it, because we always quietly in the background being at the forefront of the real intense work, but never in a kind of a public eye view. We're not really, you know, demonstrating all that work that we're doing and really underselling ourselves here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think a couple of points. I mean, firstly, if I have to read one more tweet about how St Mungo's have solved the rough sleeping problem in London, I literally have to delete my account. Not barely a mention of the work that SHP, and you know, it's very much been a partnership approach.
Can I just
Sorry,
Mark, can I just say something on that? So I find it really interesting that there are all these charities that are work. Sorry, I can't concentrate now because someone. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, there are all these charities like ours, and then there's St Mungo's, and there's all this sort of like, you know, friendly competition between them. And so we were just talking in our group about the fact that these clients are having to rent at ridiculously high prices. Like, yes, their benefits pay for all of it, but when they start working, they have to look for somewhere else because they're in a little room and they're paying £960. So we were just thinking about if there was some way for us as charities, as different charities, and obviously this would have to kind of come from the top, to in some ways work together, considering the fact that we are handing these landlords tenants for them. You know, we're actually doing a lot of work for the landlords, just giving them tenants. So I'm just thinking, you know, why should we were in this massive housing crisis since 2010, whenever it was, where homelessness has just gone up by like, what is it, like, you know, 100% or something. And a big part of that is that there aren't any rent controls. That's one of the main reasons. And then we're just continually handing these landlords, these big agencies, tenants who can pay this £960 because of their benefits, But if we didn't, like if we worked with the other charities, maybe it's not possible to work with them on everything because we have this sort of competition model. That's just how the charity sector works. But on just that one issue, I wonder if there's some way that we could work together on maybe setting a bit of a rent control of our own for our clients that we then send into PRS. But yeah, I don't know. That's what we were discussing.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. And I mean, I think one approach to that potentially is actually providing the private rented accommodation ourselves, really. And we are starting a service shortly where we are leasing single rooms, self-contained accommodation, which will be used as move-on accommodation, which will be operating in West London. So as a model whereby we effectively become the landlord for those properties. I mean, I guess we need to be able to cover the costs of the leasing, but hopefully it offers a relatively cheap alternative to the open market, really. But also, I hear your point about the more of a collective response to the issue, and rent controls would be a brilliant idea. And I know that, you know, I think it has been suggested by Sadiq Khan, but I'm not sure it's you know, it's one of those things that's slightly hamstrung because I think obviously there's an election coming up for the mayor's issue. And I see Shamara's mentioned the real lettings, but I think that, you know, again, that's a single organizational response as opposed to a more collective one, which perhaps is something that we need to explore. But I think I take on board, I think absolutely we do need to collect the learning from this, and I think I'll make sure that Tony is, you know, has sight of that idea. And I hear absolutely, Taz, what you're saying about needing to shout about it. When you think about the amount of effort that's gone into this conference and the work that we've done to represent internally the stuff, there's no reason that we can't, and there's no reason that we shouldn't get it out there to the wider public, really. Because, you know, I think as, you know, as a member of staff for SHP, you know, I think, you know, it's been incredibly uplifting, this experience. You know, I know it's been very challenging, but actually to see the work that we've been able to do is, you know, remarkable. And I think, you know, the idea that homelessness is a given, I think has been completely undermined by this, because absolutely, if you have the resources, you have the commitment, and you have the will, then, you know, there's no reason that people should be sleeping on the streets. And I think we've managed to, you know, really respond to that, and in a way that you know, even knowing the organization as I do, I think it's been completely overwhelming, really. So yeah, so I think, yeah, this isn't the end. This is, you know, this is maybe the beginning of something, I guess. And actually it is the end, because we've gone beyond 12 o'clock. So thanks very much to all of the presenters. I hope, well, certainly they gave me an insight into stuff, and I've been sort of quite closely involved, but hopefully to the audience here, it's been incredibly interesting and an eye-opener. And thanks for all of you guys who showed up as well, because I think one of the anxieties running these workshops is that we would end up talking to ourselves, but that hasn't been the case at all. We've had a really great turnout and a good representation across the organization. So thank you, everybody.